In this exciting episode, Arthur Franz is back. Last time he was a school teacher making ends meet by slinging hash in The Case of the Married Moonlighter. This time, he's a beleaguered investment guru who's still working nights. Much to his wife's chagrin, he'll need legal help before it's all said and done. Fortunately, he makes a best-in-class investment in good legal help. It's Perry Mason, Season 3, Episode 7, The Case of the Golden Fraud.
A gentlewoman. An angel, almost. As though a man shouldn't touch her, you know?
Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose here, pretty simple, provide an audio companion to the greatest legal drama in television history, Perry Mason. I plan to do an episode for each episode of the television series, and as time permits, I'll get to some of those made-for-TV movies too. I'll be working through the series in the order in which the episodes were originally aired. Each episode, I give you a brief refresher on the plot, and I compare it with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel it was adapted from, if necessary. Next, I list some key pieces of trivia before I tackle the episode's theme. We then hear a Perry proverb, a pearl of wisdom from the man himself, before we head to the post-case water cooler where, just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of their adventures. But first, to the law library! Each episode in the law library, we investigate a legal conundrum in the episode so we can find fresh precedents for future cases. This episode in the law library, we discuss legal strategy. We get rare insight into how Hamilton Berger thinks about putting together a case in the middle of this episode. Here's his defense of circumstantial evidence. This brings up two interesting points. One, the wag in me says, Hamilton, you've been losing cases for 3 seasons. Maybe the whole trust in circumstantial evidence strategy is unsupported. The problem is that it may not be the method. It could be Hamilton's execution. You know, Perry uses circumstantial evidence all the time. He can just get away with speculation a little bit easier because he's the defense attorney, which brings me to point 2. Does Berger actually do this? It seems like he and Tragg fall for the okie doke so frequently because they ignore circumstantial evidence and go straight for the smoking gun, which turns out to be misleading. If you've got any thoughts on this, let me know. Now, let's get to the plot of this episode. The Case of the Golden Fraud. The con is in effect. As the episode opens, a woman named Sylvia Wells, who apparently puts bejeweled necklaces on her pet cat, sets up some chicanery with hidden mics and a guy named Rip who can splice audio. I mean, Sylvia does everything in this opening scene but sit in a leather chair and stroke the cat's back while saying things like, excellent, excellent, it's all going according to plan. She's up to no and good, that's for sure. Cut to the man she's trying to snag, Richard Vanneman, an investment banker competing for a management position. He thinks he's caught his boss's eye, but he's not willing to count his investment eggs before they're hatched. His wife is a little more hopeful. All this concern about the promotion, however, means Dickie V has been scouring for big business, and that means accommodating calls from, Sylvia. She says she's got money, and the V-ster needs to bag this client if he wants to look good for the boss. As we already know, Miss Wells is running game, but then her bejeweled cat lets the cat out of the bag. There's just a little problem. Dickie V forgot his precious golden coin in Sylvia Wells's apartment. When he returns, he can't find the coin, but he does find a little bit of murder. Better call on Perry, Dick. Dickie V isn't entirely forthright with Perry. Ostensibly, Dick wants Perry to help him get a golden coin back. Well, Miss Bunny Lee beats Paul to the punch. Why the bunny runaround? A surefire way for the apartment dude to confirm that Dickie V was in the apartment the night Sylvia was killed. How do we know Dickie V needs to get his priorities straight? This guy called his boss with his one phone call from the slammer. Not his wife, not his attorney, his boss. And what does Mr. Noble do for all that? Fire Dickie boy. Okay, so who are our suspects? Well, there's Fred Petrie, the guy competing with Vanneman for the vice president position, though it turns out his wife was behind the whole Sylvia Wells thing. Let's take a look at their marriage. Perry exposes this insidious plot, but neither of them are murderers. It wasn't Mrs. Vanneman, though she doubted her husband's integrity. How about Boss Noble? Nope, he's too busy being self righteous, old Neil Hamilton, up to his usual tricks. That just leaves Elliot Hale, the apartment clerk, the poor dope. This guy idealized Sylvia, then went into a murderous rage when he heard the fake spliced audio that implicated Sylvia and Dickie V in an emotional affair. He gives us, Elliot Hale that is, one of the show's creepiest confessions yet. Eesh. Meanwhile, long live capitalism! You're gonna have to compete for that position again, Richard and Fred. Maybe Mr. Noble is waiting to see which of these two husbands will call shenanigans on the poor headwear choices by their respective wives. Dickie V's wife must have gone to the same shop as Harriet Bain from The Case of the Green-Eyed Sister, and Madge Wainwright from next week's The Case of the Barter Bikini must be giving fashion tips to Mrs. Petrie. Goodness, step up your fashion game, gals. That's not the headwear of the wife of a vice president. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. Adela is something about a particular actor or actress in the episode. And a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. Our Paul for this episode involves the golden coin that Noble gives Petrie and Vanneman. Let's let Bunny Lee describe it. Our Paul prompt: does such a coin actually exist? And if so, how much is it worth? Let me know what you find. Our Della for this episode could only be the one and only Asa Maynor, aka Miss Bunny Lee. I absolutely love the way she plays this part. Maynor is only in one episode of the show. Still, I wanted to do a deep dive. Here's 10 about Miss Bunny. Number 1, she was born in 1936 in Birmingham, Alabama. That happens to be the hometown of Gail Patrick Jackson, the executive producer of Perry Mason. Number 2, somehow Miss Maynor got to California and she was spotted at the Pasadena Playhouse, a venue that looms large in the careers of many Perry Mason stars, including Raymond Burr. Maynor gets put in a monster flick called Man Beast in 1956, where she's credited as Virginia Maynor. Speculation is that the producers changed her name to make potential patrons think she was Virginia Mayo. Number 3, in 1959, she's spending time with Ed Cookie Burns, the cat who starred in 77 Sunset Strip and who had a hit with the novelty single Cookie Cookie, Lend Me Your Comb. Maynard ended up marrying the dude in 1962 and having a son named Logan with him. Number 4, in 1959, she gets a bit part in Perry Mason thanks to fellow Birmingham, Alabama native Gail Patrick Jackson. Maynard's other TV work includes Wagon Train, The Lawman, and the role of stewardess in one of the iconic episodes of Twilight Zone, Nightmare at 20,000 feet. Number 5, had to share this fun anecdote. So Ed Burns comes by the set of the Twilight Zone while Maynard is filming Nightmare at 20,000 feet. And then Burns and William Shatner plan a prank on the director. They make it look like they're having a fight over the affections of Maynard. Like, Lothario Shatner came on to Maynard and now hubby Burns is upset about it. So they let the director see a building fracas, and then Burns hits Shatner, and Shatner appears to fall. The description was 40 feet, and the director thinks Bill Shatner is dead. He runs over, and just then Bill Shatner emerges from a photo booth. It was a dummy dressed up to look like Shatner's character. Wah, 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 wah. Number 6, Maynard was really good friends with Natalie Wood and shows up at the edges of biographies of Natalie Wood, especially around the time Wood married and then got divorced from Robert Wagner the first time. Number 7, Maynard divorced Ed Burns in 1971. They didn't make it 10 years, and for a short time, she became an interior decorator. Late in the decade, she had to take deadbeat Burns to court when the dude wasn't coughing up child support. Son Logan, by the way, became a news anchor for the NBC Hartford, Connecticut affiliate. Number 8, Maynard came back to film in the 1970s one last time, 1972's Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. Number 9, in the 1990s, Maynard apparently became an executive at NBC. Another book I read said she also became a stockbroker. Man, life beyond acting for Miss Bunny Lee. And then number 10, this gal's still kicking. She's 86 years old. Ed Burns, with whom she'll be perpetually linked, died in 2020. Our Perry for this episode involves Perry's relationship with Mr. Noble. They know each other. That's borne out by the fact that Perry mercilessly criticizes Mr. Noble on the way he handled this fracas with Dickie V. It's also clear he knows how Mr. Noble thinks well enough to predict how Mr. Noble will handle the competition between Vanneman and Petrie. A professional acquaintance, more than likely, more than a friend, but Perry knows some movers and shakers. Way to go. Our theme for this episode, angels. Our key quotations come from Elliot Hale and Perry. First, the ideal.
Miss Wells was a lady, Mr. Mason. A gentlewoman. An angel, almost. As though a man shouldn't touch her, you know?
Then Perry's unpacking of how that ideal can get ugly really quick.
Your angel was being defiled. Your idol had slipped. The woman with whom you were so in love had revealed feet of clay.
Now we get 4 women in the episode. Well, besides Della, can we all agree she's the show's true angel? Anywho, we get 4 female characters who only appear in this episode and give us a nice range of spots on the angel spectrum, if you will. First, Bunny Lee. What's Paul's comment on this? Good time, girl?
That girl doesn't look like any coin collector.
more the paper money type.
It's hilarious that Mr. Idealized Woman Hale went for Bunny as the bait in his attempt to catch Vanneman. I don't think anyone thinks Miss Lee is an angel. Okay, what about Mrs. Vanneman? Here's an ungenerous description from her rival Doris Petrie.
I told her his marriage was one of convenience, not love. That his wife was rather drab, but that she has lots of money.
Well, at the end of the episode, she's got her husband back. But if Doris is right and she's rich, why is Mrs. Vanneman wearing that dowdy hat through the whole episode? An angel covering her halo. Then there's Doris Petrie herself. Give us your mission statement, ma'am.
I'm not a hypocrite. I don't care 2 cents about him. I want that vice presidency for you.
Man, she's no angel, she's the devil. And then there's Sylvia. She appears to be an angel. But she didn't quite have the halo to match. The irony, she got murdered for a tarnished halo that wasn't really tarnished, at least not for the reason Mr. Hale thought. First, Hale idealizes her, and given what we know about the game she was running with her pal Doris, that angel's face was a fake in the first place. Then she got murdered for an affair she really wasn't having. Oh my goodness. In the broken world of Perry Mason, no one's a total angel. Now, let's hear a Perry proverb. Perry knows Mr. Noble, and he knows how to be noble. And this Mr. Noble isn't living up to his name. Tell him what's wrong with his logic, Perry. It's pretty wise.
What makes you so sure that Dick Vanneman is innocent?
Well, for one thing, a guilty man uses the one phone call allowed him by the police to get in touch with his attorney, not his employer.
Listen good, Mr. Noble. This kind of behavior, A, makes me wonder about Dick Vanneman. Why call this stuffed shirt when you're in trouble? And it makes me wonder about you, J'accuse, Monsieur Noble, for your uptight ways. Thanks for setting us straight, Perry. If everyone in LA was as uptight as Mr. Noble, employment would dip considerably, given the fact that there's a ton of people walking around having been falsely accused of murder. Now let's grab a swig at the water cooler.
There is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Each episode in the water cooler, we offer deleted scenes where we imagine some sequences that didn't quite make the episode's final cut. Number 1, the Vannemans are supposed to meet Perry for dinner, but now it's Mrs. Vanneman who gets called away at the last minute. Boom, boom. Number 2, Paul confirms in person that Miss Bunny Lee is the paper money type. Number 3, Della hires Rip Connors to doctor some tape of her and Perry. Paul Drake can be terrible, Della. Burger can't stop you, not the way that Arthur Tragg can, Della. Number 4, the inevitable business dinner that features the Petries and Vannemans at the same table. So, how was life in Iowa, Doris? Any more friends back there we should know about, Doris? Number 5, finally, Vanneman wins the VP position when Petrie loses a client because Petrie has kept concealed his toupee. I have it from a pretty good source that Alan Hewitt, a.k.a. Fred Petrie, was rocking a rug. Maybe it won't make a difference. Let's check out our Paul prompts from previous episodes. My dad sent in a twofer this week. He gave us a response to the Paul prompt from the Case of the Startled Stallion, which, if you remember, involved summer stock theater. He writes, "Summer stock is a losing proposition financially, and no one invests in it. People and companies contribute to it. If it is a 501c3 organization, the contribution is deductible. Theater investing comes in the form of investments in various productions. It generally takes $10,000 minimum to play, and that verb is used advisedly. Only 1 in 5 Broadway productions turn a profit. Investors do receive perks such as additional access, notice of special events, and opportunities for future investments. Love it. He also responded to our last episode's prompt, which concerned stereos. Here was Frank Thatcher's boast to his gal Donna Kress.
And look, stereo. The very best there is.
Dad found a hi-fi stereo review from September 1959, right in line with when the episode was filmed. It was a, quote, treasure trove of information that clearly supports Frank Thatcher's assertion about the availability of quality stereo sound equipment. So my dad lists some of the features that high-end stereo equipment in 1959 would have featured: equalizers, bass and treble settings, scratch filter, channel balancing, master volume control, center channel output, vibration-free turntables, a vertical and lateral rumble completely inaudible, wow and flutter far better than exacting broadcast standards. In summary, my dad ends, there was some amazing stereo equipment available in 1959. Unfortunately, even outstanding equipment could not make up for Donna Kress's lack of vocal talent. Thanks so much, Dad. I also received a note from dedicated listener April. She writes concerning the case of Paul Drake's dilemma, quote, when Henry Dameron told Frank and his wife to find another rooftop to argue on, I did a search for a cat on a hot tin roof, and it came out the year before. This episode of Perry Mason is my all-time favorite because of the friendship between Paul and Perry. Lovely, April. Thank you so much. I also received a note this week from Tom, a listener who hails from suburban Chicago. He writes, thank you so much for doing the podcast. I've been a fan of Perry Mason for many years. When the pandemic kept me home more than usual, I decided to do a rewatch of the original Perry Mason TV series. When I was a little over halfway through my rewatch, I was delighted to find this podcast. Your Perry Pod episodes do indeed make great companions for the TV shows, and I enjoy them very much. In addition, a local nostalgia TV network, MeTV, is currently airing the Perry Mason made-for-TV movies, so I get to watch those again and listen to the episodes you've recorded for them. Thanks so much for that note, Tom. As always, I love feedback about this particular episode of the podcast in general. Was there something about this episode you'd like to comment on or correct? You can email me at theperrypod@gmail.com. All Perry Pod episodes are available via Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. Join us for our next episode featuring Miss USA 1959, Terry Huntington, as a beleaguered swimsuit model. It's the case of the bartered bikini. Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat!